All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Again, this is Mylio's Getting Started webinar series. We're on part 4. We're going to be talking about using Spaces today. Spaces is a new feature released with version 24 of Mylio, and it's pretty cool. So we're going to tell you all about it. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm JC Figueroa. I'm the customer success lead for Mylio Photos. That means that I manage the support team and teams that interface with you when you are trying to chat and ask questions or contacting us for support. And I also do things like this, making sure that you're successful with your Mylio journey. I am an avid underwater photographer. I've been a photo organization educator for quite a while, and I've spent all of my adult life working with media technology, whether it's video editing. I used to work for a NBC and be a cameraman and all that fun stuff. And now I do this. So I'll be leading the session today. Joining me is the amazing Lori Rubin. Lori is a product evangelist for Mylio. She's an amazing professional photographer. Her wildlife photography is quite captivating. And she's a photo educator that has been teaching people how to capture and edit photos for a long time. She'll be helping us with questions. So thank you, Lori. All right. So now let's talk about spaces. That's the subject for today's session. If this is your first session and you did not join us for previous Getting Started sessions, no worries. We're not going to go over the basics. So if you have some questions, feel free to ask those and we'll address them at the end. But you can still join us and learn about this particular feature set. Spaces is, well, the best way to explain it, I was trying to explain this to my brother-in-law over the holidays. And Spaces is like having more than one desk in your office. So imagine if you had a big office, and instead of just having your one desk, you had multiple desks. And every one of these desks was designated to do specific kind of work. So if you were paying bills and you were just working on your family bills, you would have a desk just for bills. Not my favorite desk. But then you could have a desk for working on a scrapbook project, or a desk specifically for work, or a desk for working on electronics. So all of these different workspaces that you would have set up in your office, that is what the Spaces concept within the Mylio Photos app represents. It's a way for you to organize and create a unique view of your library that only follows very subject-specific content. So instead of having all 50,000 photos all presented at one in every view in Mylio, you can create a space that shows you a subset of your library, maybe your work photos versus your family photos. Or in my case, I told you I'm an underwater photographer, so a lot of my library is underwater photos, but sometimes I just want to work on my family photos, photos that I've taken of my family, and I don't want the underwater photos to get in the way. So I can create separate spaces where I just work on underwater or family. And of course, I can work on everything combined. Another great benefit of Spaces is the privacy that it can offer. You know, we all have photos in our library that we don't necessarily want anyone to see. You know, maybe there's some private moments or photos of when someone in your family or yourself was going through an illness, or maybe just photos that you want to keep to yourself. You can hide any photo in Mylio, and that immediately assigns it to the private space. And no one can access that space unless they have a code, which is, by the way, the other benefit, the security options that Spaces uses, like a PIN code. So, you know, you don't want anyone to go to your desk, the bill paying desk in your office, and be able to start sending money to anyone, right? So imagine if you could lock that desk in your office so no one could access it, and they would need a PIN code. That's what Spaces in your Mylio Photos library allows you to do. You can assign a PIN code to a space, and only people with that PIN code can access it. It can also help to make your library feel less cluttered. You know, we have a lot of customers that share one Mylio account with their entire library. So their kids' phones and both spouses' phones are all in the same account. So photos from all 4 devices are being combined. And maybe you don't want to see all the selfies that your teenage kids are taking when you're going through your photos. So you can create a space that eliminates an entire device photos from being shown. So the library can feel less clutter. And spaces, we have some default spaces that you'll see that are part of the application that you can use very easily, like the private versus the public space. But you can also create custom spaces that are catered specifically to your needs. So that's what Spaces is all about. So let me give you a brief demo, show you a few instances of this Spaces in action. So as you can see here, I'm in the calendar view. And in the calendar view, right now, I can see everything. I'm in the public space. This is an important part. When you look at the very top of Mylio here, you'll notice at the very top of the Mylio window here, it says public. That represents the space that I'm currently working in. When I switch a space, you'll see the name of that space up there. Right now, I'm in the public space. And the public space is really very simple. It means anything that hasn't been designated as a private photo. So in the public space, and I'm seeing my entire library with the exception of any photo that I've told Mylio to hide, right? I can go to a photo, any photo. I can go to a photo of this cute little baby girl right here. I can right-click on that photo and I can say hide photo. See, under privacy says hide that photo. If I were to click that, that photo would disappear from this view because I'm in the public space. And then I wouldn't be able to see it. So that is what the public space is about. And the reason I'm explaining this is because you're going to see a huge difference when I switch my space in a second. So right now in the calendar view, I'm seeing photos from my family. I'm seeing some photos that I've taken underwater. I'm seeing photos of musical theater that I've been a part of, photos of my kids, all kinds of photos, all mixed together in my calendar view. Likewise, if I go to my map view, you'll see that there's photos all over the world here. And if I zoom in on any area, particularly near where I live, you see that there's lots of little thumbnails showing all the different places where I have been or I've spent a lot of time. And even in my people view, there's a lot of people because all the people that I've categorized or I'm keeping track of in my people view are being represented. And of course, in the all photos view, there is just a lot of photos. If I go here, you'll see that there's 48,000 photos in my all photos view. Now I'm going to switch spaces. And to switch spaces, I just go over here to the left panel. And just above the tools icon, there is the Spaces icon. And when I click on Spaces, the first thing that's going to happen if you've never used Spaces before is that you're going to get a welcome message. That's going to say, welcome to Spaces. And it gives you a brief explanation of what Spaces is all about. You can also click right here where it says learn more about Spaces, and that will launch a browser and it will take you to a Spaces video course where you can learn all about working. Actually, this opens the manual. My apologies. So this takes you to the manual section of our manual, where you can learn all about Spaces and how to use that. There's also a video course that I will show you at the end of the session. So when you first launch Spaces, if you haven't used it before, this message will come up. It will keep coming up until you click on this do not show again view. So make sure that if the message is starting to get annoying, just click that box and it will not come up again. But I'm just going to leave it there because I like to show people about it. And I'm going to click continue. And this gives me the menu of the different spaces that I have created. And notice that I have a family space, a personal space, public space, which is the one I'm in, workspace, and then I have some spaces that are locked. Guest, everything, and private. Private space, if I click on that, it's only going to show all of those photos that I've hidden and that I said, I want these photos to be private. So I'm not going to click on that space. If I click on everything, it's going to show me everything. There's going to be no filters. It's going to be the entire library, including any private photos. So something to know about. Any new account that you create in Mylio with the current version of the software is going to default to the everything space. And it's not until you start hiding photos or managing spaces that you'll see those options come up. So I'm going to switch from the public space to the underwater space. This is a custom space that I've created for myself. And when I click there, you'll notice that my view immediately changes. Now, instead of seeing all those family photos that I was seeing, I'm only seeing underwater photos. And this is pervasive around all my views. Also notice that instead of looking at 48,000 photos, I'm only looking at about 4,500 photos. And up here on underwater is being represented. Mylio is telling me, hey, you're in the underwater space right now. You're no longer in the public space. So that is the underwater space, and it's pervasive across all views. If I click on my calendar view now, you'll notice that I don't have the family photos being presented anymore. I don't have photos of theater or other things. All that's here is underwater photos. If I go to my map view, you'll notice that most of the photos disappeared, and it's only showing me photos that have been taken underwater in different parts of the world, photos that I have geotagged. And even in the people view, you'll notice that it's only showing me photos of divers or people that I go diving with, because those are the photos that are categorized as being part of the underwater photo collection. So that is an interesting and very real use of space. I use this all the time. I use the underwater spaces when I'm working on my underwater photos. So how did I get here? How do I create a space? How do I make a space that's customized for me? Well, it's really pretty easy. You know, if I were to switch to the family space, it would just go to photos that have been categorized as family photos. And I keep throwing this word out there, categorized. What does that mean? What photos get categorized? What is a category? So let's talk about that next, because it's an integral building block into creating a space. The basic building block of spaces is categories. So let's talk about that really quick. What are categories? So categories are a broad organization tool in Mylio that allows you to assign well, there's no better word for it, a category to different groups of photos. You can assign categories to a folder. You can assign categories to a file, an individual file or a group of files, or you can assign categories to events. Imagine, if you will, most of you have probably heard of keywords. You can go to a photo and assign a keyword to it that says, okay, this photo is a birthday party, or this photo is a photo of a monkey. Yes, that's something that you can do. But imagine if I had to take all 4,500 of my underwater photos and go to them and assign a keyword to each one of them. That's a lot of work. I'm way too lazy to do that. I really like being able to access all my underwater photos, but I don't want to go to every single photo to categorize it so that it shows in the right space. So using categories, I can assign those categories to big groups of photos. And then once the category exists, it becomes a building block to creating a space. Let me show you what I mean with the same example, the underwater photos category. So I'm going to switch back to the public space. And I'm going to go to my folder view. And most of my underwater photos are taken when I go on a trip, right? So if I go here, you'll notice I have a folder called trips. And if I go in that folder, there's folders for different trips that I've taken. And the trips that involve diving, like this trip to Galapagos in 2021, when I go inside that folder, there are a couple of different folders. There's a folder called land, but there's also some folders that have video and photos that are underwater. There is an icon. I'm going to zoom in on the screen so you can really see this icon. So there's this icon on the top corner of any folder where you can assign a category to the folder. And you'll notice that for this folder, the Galapagos underwater folder, I have assigned the category underwater. So everything inside that folder, every single one of the 312 photos inside that folder has now inherited that category. And when I ask Mylio for underwater photos or photos that have been assigned the underwater category, everything in that folder is going to come up. Likewise with other folders that I have marked in the same manner. So I can go here to row 10 in 2007, and likewise there is an underwater folder here. If I were to click on that folder, you'll notice that the underwater category has been assigned to that folder. Other folders, like, you know, my buddy Greg was in the same trip and he shared his photos with me. That folder doesn't have a custom category assigned to it. If this folder had underwater photos, I could go here to custom and assign that underwater category to it, but I'm not gonna, because those are not underwater photos, right? So that is how I assign a category. And what's really interesting is that categories can be super powerful because they are inherited from the parent folder. The trips folder itself, if I show you the categorization of that folder, you'll notice that it has the category travel assigned to that folder. And if I go to any folder that is within that folder, so if I open my trips folder and I select any folder, you'll notice that under the categories section, it's going to show me that this folder, British Columbia 2004, has inherited the category travel. It inherited from the parent folder, from the trips folder. You can go to any photo and you can see if that photo has any categories assigned to it or inherited. So for example, this photo of my wife and I during my daughter's wedding, if I scroll down to the categories section, you'll notice that it has two categories that it has inherited: family and travel. This was a destination wedding and it was obviously a family event. So both of those categories are pertinent, but I didn't have to assign the category to the photo itself. I can select this photo and click here and assign a category to it. I can also create custom categories. So underwater wasn't one of the default categories that comes with Mylio, but you can create up to 50 categories and you can manage them any way you want. So if I want to create a wife category, for example, I could click add new and I could say wifey and hit enter. And now that category exists. And I could go ahead and assign that category to this particular photo by clicking the plus button and saying, okay, this is a photo that has my wife in it. Not something that I'm likely to do because I can just ask Mylio for photos of Sarah and that would be a lot easier, but it's an example. All right, so now that I have the underwater category, you'll notice that I can use that in many ways. I can go to a quick filter, which we discussed previously. I can filter by category, and one of the categories there is underwater. So if I were to filter by that category, that is what I'm getting. I'm getting all of the photos that have either been assigned directly or had inherited the underwater category. Then what I've done is I save that filter collection as a quick filter. So if I go here to my quick filters, you'll notice that one of my filters is called underwater only. And that is basically a filter that shows all of my underwater photos and none of my private photos. It is a special category where no private photos are shown and only photos that correspond with the underwater category are shown. And the final step in creating the underwater space was creating a new space by clicking Manage Spaces. It's going to ask me for a PIN code. By the way, this is not something that I covered before. The first time you use Spaces, it's going to ask you to enter a master passcode. This is so that you can protect your private photos and so that you can restrict certain spaces from being used by family members or people that are collaborating in your library, that you don't want them to have access to certain photos or even certain features. And we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to enter my PIN code here. And I could go ahead and create a new category. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate that underwater category. So if I went here and I said underwater 2, And then I can do certain things or assign certain characteristics to this category. I can decide whether this category needs to be passcode protected or not. And I can tell Mylio, okay, use the master passcode or use a passcode that's specific to this space. So imagine, if you will, that you have a kid and you want to provide that kid an iPad so that they can see certain family photos, maybe photos of when they were growing up or photos of the family before they were born. You can assign a category, create a category, assign a specific passcode that is not the master passcode, it's just a passcode specifically for that space, and then assign that space to that specific device, to that iPad. So this is why the passcodes are important, and you have the option of using the master passcode or using a space-specific passcode. You also have the ability to add quick collections to a category. Right now, the default is that the public collection has been added to this. That's not what I want. I'm going to remove that, and I'm instead going to add this underwater only collection. So only underwater photos are going to be part of this category. I'm going to hit add. Now I have that. I go back. And I can even go as far as managing what tools and what permissions any particular space has. Remember, we were talking about that desk in your office where you pay all your bills. Well, you don't want everyone to access that, or maybe you don't want people to be able to open certain drawers of that desk. That's what we're doing here when we edit a space and assign certain tools and permissions. So I can go here and say, they can view photos in the calendar and the map in the album, but I don't want them to see folders, and I don't want them to be able to access the dashboard or to use the photo dedupe tool because I don't want them to remove any photos. I don't want them to see the right panel or the left panel, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, I'm going to leave them all on. You can also assign certain permissions, like for files and folders. Can they add, modify, or delete files and folders? Can they add a new folder? Can they delete a folder? Can they put more photos in the library or not when you're working in that space? Can you create or remove albums, people, events? What modifications are you going to allow? Are you going to allow them to modify the file information, like correct the date on a file, or allow them to rate a photo or not, right? So these are all very, very granular permissions that you can do. And it is up to you and your imagination on how you can use all of these devices. I'll give you a different example of how I would use this in a family situation. But for now, I just want to finish creating this underwater space. So all I have to do is click save. And now I've created underwater 2, which is identical to underwater, really. And I can just close out of this area. And if I want to switch to that space, I can just go, oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. I can just go to the spaces section. There's underwater 2, and now I'm seeing all of my underwater photos. So it's that easy to create a space. Make sure that you have a category that makes sense. Add some quick add a quick collection that includes certain filters, mostly category filters, and what categories you want to or don't want to include in that space, and then assign that space to the category and do different things with it. All right, so we talked about the benefits of spaces. We talked about categories, how to add them, how to assign them to folders or events or to a file, specifically how to customize those categories. And we talked about managing spaces, right? Let's talk about the default spaces for a second. So public is this space where you can see everything except private. I mentioned that earlier. Personal space is a space that includes any photos that have been categorized as personal plus family. Think of personal as the opposite of work. So if you're an individual that has to take photos related to your work, and you want to keep your personal photos apart from your work photos, you can very easily put all the work photos into one folder, assign the work category to that folder, and very quickly switch from the workspace to the personal space, where you'll see 2 different subsets of your library. The family space has the family category assigned to it. The private space is the space where only private photos are shown. And that one, notice, is going to be restricted by default. Same with the guest space. The guest space is a very restricted access space. I'll show you that one very quickly because it's an important one. If you switch to guest space, you're not going to be able to do certain things. And I'll show you by managing that space. If I go to the guest space and I click edit, we'll go here and notice that under permissions, they have no permissions. So when you switch a device to guest mode, the person that is interacting with those photos cannot make any changes to those photos. They can see them, but they cannot change them. So this is, again, a perfect thing for a kid, or for if, say that you're on a flight. Imagine that I was on a plane and I was talking to a fellow diver. We're headed to the same destination to go diving, and I want him to see some of my underwater photos, but I want to make sure that they don't mess anything up. I can switch to the guest space, and they're going to be able to look through photos, but not be able to modify my library in any way. They're not going to be able to change a rating or delete a photo by mistake or do anything that I don't want them to do. So that's what the guest space is about. It's a very restricted space. So make sure that when you're working in Mylio, if you ever are working in Mylio and it feels like Mylio is not working, like you can't do certain things, look at what space you're under. And if you're in the guest space, you're going to be very restricted. So just go ahead and switch to a different space like public or everything, depending on what you want to access at that time. So that's the guest space. And everything I mentioned before is just that. It's everything. It's a space with no restrictions, with no limited access. So every photo can be seen. Every feature of the application can be accessed. You can edit, modify, do anything to everything, which is one of the reasons why it's locked by default once you start using the spaces feature, once you have set that master code. And again, the master code is not going to be set until the first time you attempt to use spaces. It's going to ask you to set that code. So speaking of codes, this is something that we get often where people forget their code. So if you go to switch to a space, like imagine I wanted to switch to the guest space. So typically you would see a link here at the bottom of the passcode screen that would allow you to reset that passcode. I am not seeing that here. It might be because I'm running a version of Mylio that is not for public consumption. So apologies about that. I will look into it. But typically you would see a link here that says forgot PIN, and you can click on it. And that would allow you to, if you're the owner of the account, basically would send you an email where you can reset your PIN code. All right, let's keep going because we are running out of time. The next section that we're going to talk about is remote control. And remote control is the ability to assign a space to a particular device. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of imagining that I was creating an iPad for my granddaughter to use where she could see certain photos, but not modify those photos and not change anything about my library and only have access to certain photos. That's what remote control lets you do. It lets you take a workspace and assign it to a device and lock that device to that space so that only that workspace can be used on that device. This is super, super useful when you have family members or you're collaborating with other people using the same Mylio account. So let's just go through it and I show you how it works. So let's imagine that my granddaughter Lucy, as she grows up, likes photos of animals. And I want to make sure that I set up an iPad where she can see every animal photo that I've taken over the years, but not have access to anything else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by categorizing those photos, right? So I'm going to go to my quick filters and I'm going to take advantage, in this case, of Mylio's smart tag technology and say, Mylio, show me every photo of animals that I have, right? And if I look through here, there's going to be every photo that has animals in it. It seems to be too many She's going to get bored with this. So maybe we should limit this to specific animals. So I'm going to get rid of just animal and scroll down, and I'm going to say, okay, I know she likes cats and I know she likes monkeys. So let's just limit this to photos of cats and photos of monkeys. So first I'll find all the cat photos, right? I'm going to select them all. I'm going to open the information panel so that I can assign a category to this photos. And I'm going to click here, and I need a new category that is specific for Lucy's animals, right? So I'm going to click the little pencil here. I'm going to create a new category. I'm going to call it Lucy's animals. I'm going to try to spell it correctly so she learns how to spell. I'm going to hit enter. I might change the color to something happier. Maybe let's make it a brighter pink color. There we go. That's more purple than pink, but okay. So now I have that category. I have all the photos selected. I'm going to go ahead and assign Lucy's animals to all these cat photos. Mylio is asking me if I really want to do that. Yes, I do. And then I'm going to switch from cat to monkey. Here's a bunch of photos of monkeys. I'm going to select them all. Maybe not this photo that has people in it. There we go. So we have a bunch of monkey photos. I'm going to assign the same category to that. Lucy's animals. And I'm going to hit apply. Yes. Great. I did that. Now I'm going to create a quick filter. And I'm going to create that filter by not assigning a smart tag anymore, but assigning multiple categories, both or the one category, the new category, which is Lucy's animals. So I'm going to pin that category, and I'm going to save that as a quick filter. Save as a new quick collection. So now that I've created this collection of monkeys and cat photos, I'm going to save this as Lucy's animals quick collection. And finally, I'm going to create a space by click Manage Spaces. I'm going to add a new space. It's going to be called Lucy's iPad space. And I'm going to, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to passcode protect this so that once this space has been assigned, the person using this has to know the passcode to get out. So I'm going to set a specific space passcode. And I'm going to require that passcode in order to exit the space. What that means is that when I assign this space, in order for the person using the device to switch to another space, they have to know the passcode. So now we've locked it in. Then I'm going to assign the correct quick collection, not public, but instead I'm going to assign Lucy's animals. Notice that Mylio is smart enough to add the don't include private photos to it. So that quick collection has been added. I'm going to decide which tools can be seen. So I don't think I want her to use the calendar or albums or folders. People is irrelevant in this case, but I do want her to see the map, and then I want her to see the all photos view. She doesn't need the left side panel, but I'll leave the right panel there so that she can see information like when the photo was taken, what camera I used when I was taking that photo. She won't need to declutter or dedupe those photos. And she definitely doesn't need the dashboard because that's to access other devices and do administrative work on my account. So let's turn that off. Then I'm going to change the permissions, and basically I'm going to remove all permissions so that there is no access to anything. Actually, I'm gonna let her do one thing. I'm gonna let her add keywords and maybe change the rating. I wanna know which photos she thinks are the best. So if I allow rating, she'll be able to give a photo 5 stars or 3 stars, etc. So now that I've set this up exactly how I want it, I'm gonna save it. And I'm gonna exit the spaces. And then I'm gonna go to my devices by going to the dashboard devices. I'm gonna go to the iPad that I'm gonna give her to use, and I'm going to assign a space to that device. Notice that when I select that device under current space, there's already a space, a default space set to that device. I'm gonna change that default space from public to Lucy's iPad. It wants the space, not the master code, but the specific space paths code that I created for that space. So I enter that. Now, as soon as that iPad is turned on, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn this iPad on and I'm going to share the screen. All right, so there is my iPad. And what's going to happen is that as soon as I launch Mylio, let's make this a little bit larger so you can see it much better. As soon as I launch Mylio on this application, it's going to authenticate against our service. It's going to see that there's a new space set up for this particular device, and it automatically assigned that space to this iPad. So now this iPad is on the Lucy's iPad space. So you'll notice that now this space, she can click on the calendar. I could try to click on the calendar or other views, but the only ones that are available are the map view and the all photos view. And the photos in there are photos of cats and photos of monkeys. There should be some photos of monkeys here coming up. Let's see. Oh, there they are. So remotely, I was able to assign that space to this device. And this device, I am not able to change the space. If I were to tap the spaces and try to go to a different space here, it says enter the 4-digit numeric passcode required to exit the current space. They don't know the passcode, so they can't change the space. So that is how remote control works. And now Lucy can look at photos of monkeys and cats in that iPad without me being worried that she'll delete or erase any photos from my photo collection. So that is a brief overview of spaces and all the different things that you can do. I hope that was helpful. We'll take all your questions here in a second. Very quickly, I want you to remind you all the different places that you can go to get help with Mylio Photos, to learn not just about spaces and categories, but any feature of Mylio. We have our in-app help menu, so you can always go to either the help menu here or go to the more menu and click on help. And here you have quick start training, which takes you to our getting started training with Mylio. You can join our community. That is a special website where you can find video courses. You can sign up for webinars like this one. You can sign up for coffee breaks, which is an event we do once a week, where it's an open Zoom call where anyone can join. You can drink coffee or not while you join. But during those sessions, we always highlight a specific feature. Earlier this week, we did it. And Lori, what did we do this week? I already forgot.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I will tell you in just a second because I forgot as well.
It was only 2 days ago. You think we both
I know.
remember?
Let's see here. Hang on here. Navigating Mylio Photos sync panel.
Oh yeah, we talked about the sync panel. So earlier this week during our coffee break, we talked about the sync panel. Looks like Kim was part of that. She remembered before we did. If you want to access the Mylio manual, that's our how-to guide. So you can click on this link from our help menu, or you can just go to manual.mylio.com. The Mylio Photos Fundamental course is particularly useful. I strongly advise anyone that is new to Mylio to take the time to go through this course. They are 5.5 hours worth of classes here, and you don't have to sit there and watch the thing from beginning to end for 5 hours. You can use it as a reference guide where you can go and access specific information, or you can choose to go one chapter at a time and just watch the videos for that chapter. Each video by itself is between 5 and 10 minutes, so it's not a huge commitment, but it's a great way to start familiarizing yourself with Mylio and learning the fundamentals of how to use the application. You can also access our support forum. Our support forum is really the Mylio users forum. It is meant for users to help each other. So if you go there and you ask a question, other Mylio users from all parts of the world will give you their experiences and tell you how they're addressing that particular question or workflow that you might have. We have FAQs, and of course, you can always contact support by going to support.mylio.com, or even better, you can contact support right here from the help menu by clicking the contact Mylio support. When you do that, we get logs from your systems, and that really helps us diagnose any technical issues that your system might have. So we really encourage you to, if you need support help, to use that contact support right from the app, because it provides us a lot more information, and we're able to help you in a much more efficient manner. All right, that's it. Let's take any questions that anyone might have. Lori, what questions do we have?
Well, Kim is asking a question. She's asking, are spaces like smart collections?
They can be. I mean, a space requires a quick collection in order to work. So in some ways it is, but you can assign while you can create quick collections that include certain things, the only thing that you can assign to a space is really categories. So you cannot make a space based on people or based on, for example, a file type. You can do that with quick collections, right? I can go to my all photos view here, and I can create, I have quick collections that, like, let's use some of the ones that are default, like sharp cats, right? So if I go here and I click on sharp cats, this is a quick collection based on AI of cats and AI of the photo not being blurry. I could not assign that quick collection to a space because it doesn't include a category. So spaces are really designed to work with categories. So you first need to categorize portions of your library and then use that as a space. So I would say that a smart collection or a quick collection is one of the building blocks to building a space. And the building blocks really go categories, quick collection, spaces. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? If you have a question, just put it in the Q&A.
And feel free to ask about anything. It doesn't have to be spaces related. You can ask any question about Mylio. If you're having an issue, we're happy to answer those questions. We have about 10 minutes that we can dedicate to this. So we'll wait a few minutes, see if there's any questions. If not, we'll give you your 10 minutes back. Uh-oh, Kim has a weird one.
Uh-oh. Go for it, Kim.
I think she's typing, so we'll give her a minute.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for her, Peter had a question earlier as we were going through spaces. So hopefully you answered his questions. One of the things you might want to go over is he's sharing some photos with from his wife's MacBook.
Uh-huh.
Most of her photos he doesn't want to see. They are work-related, screenshots and shopping ideas. So he wants to see her good images included in his images. So he wants to know if he can create a space that shows just her good images.
Yeah, you can totally do that. So what you can do is you can start with a quick filter, right? So let's say that all her photos come from her iPhone. So you could go by camera and lens and select a specific iPhone. So let's say that she has an iPhone 14 Pro. Not a lot of photos of that phone because it's not the phone I have. Let me pick my wife's phone. She has 12. Okay, so here's photos that were taken with my wife's phone. So I'm starting with that filter, and then you could add to your quick filter ratings, right? So if you have rated those photos 4 and 5 stars, they will come up. In this case, only one photo has been rated, but imagine there's a whole bunch more. Once you have created those photos, or once you have added those photos, you can select them all and assign a new category to them, right? Like I could say, this is wifey's photos, or wifey's, change the category from wifey to wifey's photos, assign that category to all those photos, and then you could go ahead and assign that, save that as a quick collection, and then assign it to a space. So like I said before, it's kind of a building blocks process. You start by filtering the photos that you want based on the device they came from, their rating, et cetera, et cetera. Then you assign a category to that set. You then assign that category to a quick collection, and then you assign that quick collection to a space. And that's how you do it. So I hope that helps.
Great. JC, I did want to mention, you had mentioned the fundamentals course, and I think you had actually broken apart just working with spaces and remote control.
Yes.
So there's a series of images. Maybe we can show that where they can find
there
that.
is. So if you go to our community site and you go down to courses, one of the courses is working with spaces and remote control. And that is just basically the chapter of the fundamental course that covers what we did today. So working with categories, working with how to add categories to folders. Each one of these videos goes into what we covered today in a little bit more detail. So if you want to review just one thing, like for example, I didn't talk about how to add a category to an event today. You could go to that video and it talks specifically about how to do that. And it looks like it's me talking about it. So hopefully I know what I'm doing. But it's different instructors too, because we all have different ways of teaching. So sometimes it's Rich, sometimes it's Angela, sometimes it's myself. So, but yeah, that's a good point. All right, looks like we have the question from Kim. So let me jump to that. I'm not sure I'm following this. So Kim, I'm gonna open your mic. And if you don't mind asking me this question again, because I'm not following.
Yeah, it's confusing. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, so the situation I have is that I had already downloaded Mylio on my PC for me because I really wanted to start exploring it and getting familiar with it and start using it for my clients. I'm a photo organizer.
Understood.
I'm one of those people. So I had set up a different space so it wouldn't interfere with my photos and my workspace.
Gotcha.
Set up a whole different user, and I took the vault that I have here with her backup. Of what I had delivered to her some time ago, and plugged it in just to see if I could bring it up and, start seeing things and doing things with it, which I could. And I have figured out that this is a way better fit for her and her lifestyle and what she does. And she travels a lot to Kenya. And so this is perfect for her. So I would like to switch her from the way I had her onto Mylio, because I had her as a user of a different program. So what I'd like to do is, since I've already paid for the Mylio Plus account for her, which is now currently there, but it's hooked up to my vault here, I'd like to just disconnect from the vault here, which should, in theory, clear it, correct? Her account from the pictures that are populated right now if I disconnect my SSD.
Well, no, because if she has already synced, there might be thumbnails or optimized images that have already been downloaded.
She's not synced at all. I'm just using my backup vault because I wanted to kind of get used to working with a separate client on my machine and see how it would work for her and kind of get to know it, because I'm training myself now both on my and hers.
Yeah.
So she's got her account completely separate on her machine. She's got her vault, which is completely separate because she's been working in Lightroom and doing some stuff with her collection now with some new stuff that she's added to it. So what I'd like to do is erase my presence from her account and have her just log in and hook up her vault.
So I'm going to suggest an alternate method.
I would love to hear it.
So on your computer, whether it's a Mac or a PC, it doesn't matter. Create a new user account. So like, for example, right now I'm in my regular account, my full name there, but I also have a demo account and I have a test account. And when I when I switch to those accounts, it's almost like I have a different computer. So create a different user account and then log into Mylio with her account on that user account.
So that's what I've got currently. I have an account. I've created a new user account just for
Okay,
her.
so you already did that. Okay,
I'm
that's
already
the part
over
where
there
I
with
was
her
confused.
account.
I thought you
Yeah,
were
sorry.
doing this on your Mylio account.
No, no,
yeah,
That's what I was
yeah.
saying. I set up a separate window.
Yeah. So
on
if
my
you already
PC.
did that and she already has the vault locally, she can connect that vault to her computer, log into her Mylio account. Mylio will populate from that vault because you created it with her Mylio account, correct?
I did, but here's the thing. I've got my vault that is now not exactly the same as her vault because I delivered her vault and she continued adding some things to it more recently, like Thanksgiving and such like that.
Just
So I've got
unregister your vault. So just go
that's what
to
I
her,
wanted to know.
Yeah, just go to your instance
The
of her
dashboard,
account,
right?
select select the vault, unregister it,
Okay.
and then that
And then
vault
have her
will,
log in.
Yeah, then have her log in because then that vault will cease to be part of the account. Now,
That's exact. I didn't want to end up with two complete collections out there somehow from different vaults.
Right. You might also want to remove your instance of your computer if your instance has already synced with your vault.
Yes.
Because what might happen is that there'll be some photos in your computer that she doesn't have.
Right.
And it'll just remove both devices, your computer and your vault. Let her add her vault to her account. It'll be basically the timestamp of Mylio for when that vault was last used.
Okay.
And that's what that account would look like. And then if you need to help her remotely, you can always re-add your computer to her account. It'll synchronize remotely and then you can help her.
Yeah, and I believe right now, the way I have it set up, the only thing I had connected to that other user space I created for her and was her photo vault. So I shouldn't have anything from my PC showing up anywhere on that account.
Right.
So, but you're right. If I want to do anything remotely, I'm figuring the way to do it and then just not have anything of my stuff because I'll be in her user space. So I'm figuring I've already got 2 clients on her heels that I'm really interested in putting in Mylio, and they're big. So I'm assuming I'm just going to have a different user space for every client I have and just do it this way.
Yeah, you'll have a different user account on your computer for
That's what I mean. I shouldn't be using spaces considering what we've just talked about.
That's why I said it.
My bad.
That is what I recommend. Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, I really appreciate you helping me with this. Thank you so much, JC.
Not a problem at all. I'm glad we were able to figure it out.
Oh my gosh.
Margaret had a question. Can you share a space with a Mylio user who is not on your account? So currently, no. Currently, Spaces is designed to be used within the same Mylio account. So it's not an account-to-account tool. It's a within one account tool. So you can share Spaces with different devices as long as those devices are all on the same account. In the future, this is one of the iterative steps that we're taking to, in the future, be able to have better collaboration within accounts. Is part of the plan, but we have to do it in steps. Otherwise, it's too big a change. And not only is it would take us a long time to deliver it, we're likely to break something in the process. So by doing it iteratively, we can deliver a better product and keep iterating on it. So. All right, well, that is all the time we have. I hope this was helpful. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to check out all of those learning resources, and we'll see you next time.